Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. My name is James Batchelor and thank you very much for joining us for these live broadcasts on the Car Dealer YouTube channel. Now today on the show, I'm chatting with Tom Vickers, the founder and CEO of GoCharged. Good afternoon, Tom.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure having you on. Really nice to finally get you on and have a chat. Now, just to give a bit of an overview of the business, I don't want to steal Tom's thunder too much, but GoCharged was launched this year. What a year to launch, eh? But yeah, it was launched this year and it's a website designed to help people make the switch to electric motoring and navigate them through what can seem a pretty confusing world at times. Now, GoCharged also works with car dealers on lead generation and on many other things as well. Now, we're going to be chatting about the business, how it can help dealers and the electric car market in general in the next 20 to 30 minutes. If you're watching on YouTube, this is a live show, so feel free to drop your questions into the comments box and I'll do my best to put them to Tom, but we'll start with mine, if we may, Tom. Sure. Now, before we get chatting about the business, Tom, I think it's probably worth sort of setting the scene a little bit. You know, with new models launching all of the time, the electric car charging infrastructure is developing all of the time as well. Electric car ownership is fast becoming very appealing to many people, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'd say it's probably the most exciting time so far, to be involved in the electric car market. And we're finding that consumer interest in EVs is at an all-time high. And as you say, if the technology is improving, the manufacturers are pushing it. Obviously, the infrastructure's still got some way to come to catch up to facilitate mass adoption. But from our point of view, it's a really, really exciting time to be involved in the EV market.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at the figures, the most recent figures, S&T figures from October, over 9,000 pure electric cars, not hybrids, but pure electrics were registered in October. Registrations up 195% on October 2019. And pure electrics now have a 6.6% share of the market. I mean, diesel, on the other hand, 20,000 diesels registered in October and a 15% share of the market. It's not going to be long, really, is it, before electrics draw level with diesels, really? I mean, what's making people make the switch, do you think?
Yeah, of course. I just put those figures into a bit of a wider context. In the year to date, diesel new car sales are down 55% and petrol down 38%, whereas overall full electrics up 168%. From 28,000 this time last year, 75,000. So that's significant growth. I think obviously we can't ignore the effects of COVID on the new car market. Not to say that growth would have happened without the situation, but I think more than ever, people are conscious of their impact on the world and on the environment. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing EV interest at an all-time high. We're also seeing that. Sorry, pardon me, James. I've completely. Sorry, James. I've drawn a complete blank.
I mean, it is quite incredible, really, how the market has sort of exploded, really, in terms of electric cars. I mean, it's a difficult sort of question to ask and to answer, really. But I do sort of wonder how much of it has been affected by COVID-19, whether, either in a positive or a negative, pun not intentional there, but either in a positive or a negative way. I don't know whether this growth has been affected by COVID or whether it was actually going to happen anyway. I mean, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, and you look at the sort of the social effects of COVID. People aren't traveling to work as much. We've seen people generally doing shorter journeys. I think some of the reasons that the used car market is booming kind of has some of the same sort of principles around why EV is booming, because people aren't going on holiday, they aren't going out as much, they've got more income to spend on cars. I think partly people are sitting at home, as I mentioned, thinking about their impact on the world more, are actually genuinely interested in EV. So I think for some of those reasons, it's removing some of the social barriers to EV adoption. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction, and we'll just continue to see it move from strength to strength. I'm sure it will be a different environment in this post-COVID world, whenever that is, as diesel and petrol starts to bounce back. But I think we've started down a road now and there's no going back. Obviously, we've got to have one eye on the proposed 2035 deadline for the ban of diesel and petrol vehicle sales. That's not going away. If anything, it's coming further forward. From what we're reading online, we can see that the government are proposing to bring it forward to 2030. we've got to have one eye on where the market's going, where are we going to get those leads from when that ban comes in place. So I think all these factors that you've spoken about, we've just discussed, they're all working in favour of sort of growing the EV market. So who knows what will happen over the next couple of years, particularly in the post-COVID world, but hopefully we'll continue to see the market go from strength to strength.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of speculation. I mean, the report came out a news story came out this week saying that Boris Johnson is considering bringing the ban further forwards to 2030. Those kinds of words they're helpful, but they're also not helpful. I mean, what we've got to remember about all of this is, yes, there may be some customers who are ready to make the switch, but car manufacturers can't just turn on the supply of electric cars and have to work to a new deadline that's 5 years closer. There are some sort of concerns really about bringing this deadline further forwards, but I suppose one way of allaying fears is if the government really gets behind the EV car market, better infrastructure, perhaps incentives to buy electric cars. Do you think the government should be doing a little bit more to incentivise people?
Yeah, I completely agree, James. And you've actually just touched on the 2 points I was going to raise. I think that investment in infrastructure is absolutely vital. There's been a survey done that estimates that they need to install about 500 odd charge points per day for the next 5 years or something on that time period to make sure we're at where we need to be. This isn't going to happen without sort of investment and help from the government. So one of the main things is the infrastructure, and secondly, incentives. I know there's a £3,000 grant available, the plug-in car grant, and there's a £350 grant available for your home charge point, but I think the government can go further to assist with the consumers, especially if they're setting these deadlines. They've kind of got to, if they're going to talk the talk, they've got to walk the walk. So I think more can be done, but hopefully we'll see that if they're serious about hitting the deadline, which I think is a realistic deadline, looking at the way that the technology is improving. The manufacturers seem to be on board with it, the way you see sort of production shifting. All you have to do is, turn on the TV, and these days you see maybe 1 in 2 or more of the television adverts you see are focused on electric or hybrid. So it's coming from the manufacturers, but I think there's more that we can do in the industry and the government can do to support it.
Yeah. And it's going to be fascinating to see when that change happens over the next sort of 10 to 15 years. Not to quote cliches here, but there is a time when people stop using typewriters and they use computers. There's got to be a moment of change, isn't there? And at the moment, the two sides are sort of crashing into each other at the moment, aren't they? It's going to be fascinating to see how that happens. Just one thing I'd like to talk about though is, yes, the market is growing. Yes, the number of cars are being launched is growing all the time. But there are still a lot of people out there who are confused about electric motoring. They've got concerns about the lifestyle changes they have to make, and also simple things like, are they on the right energy tariff to be able to charge their cars up? Yeah. People are confused, aren't they? And have you recognised that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, just to give some backstory on how we came up with the idea, it's exactly that situation. So having worked in the dealership environment, I was seeing that customers were coming into the dealership wanting to know about electric, were wanting to get into a hybrid electric car, but there was a gap in knowledge between them and the product. They weren't aware of what car suits them. If you don't even move on from the cars, which people seem to be most clued up about, they don't have a clue to do with the charging points or the right tariffs for them. And that's kind of what struck me really, that there's nothing really that educates the customer, tells them all about electric, and sort of then diverts them down into a sales channel. So having done some research on the hybrid electric vehicle market at the start of the year, I was shocked that there was nothing that tells you everything you need to know. You end up trawling from manufacturer website to manufacturer website, who all inevitably push their own offering, use different terms. Certain manufacturers refer to cars in different ways, different data. And I was researching this for a business proposal. If I'm struggling with my own business proposal, God knows what the customer's going to think. What they'll do is they'll give up and they'll stick with what they know, which is petrol and diesel, which is a real shame. So we identified that as a real issue, and to solve that, we've created GoCharged, where it effectively acts as an information source for everything you could ever need to know about electric cars, covering the cars, to the charge points for home and for business, to home energy tariffs, in the hope that we can capture these customers that we know are out there searching, educate them on on what's right for them based on their situation, and then put them down to the best provider at the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big hurdle to actually cover, which can be simply done by manufacturers supporting their dealer network is by, when the customer comes into a showroom. I think a lot of customers are, when they're told that they've got to buy a home wall box charger, or they don't have to, but they're encouraged to. A lot of these things customers haven't actually considered beforehand. But if we can actually encourage people that is part of the ownership process, and you're effectively having your own petrol station on your drive, making these things into positives, I think that people will make the transition a lot quicker, won't they? But let's talk about GoCharged now. Now, where's the concept come from? I mean, are you an EV convert yourself? I mean, how did the whole journey start?
Yeah, so I do now drive an EV. Obviously, I thought it was something really important to me was to get into an EV. So basically, I'll explain sort of where the idea came from. I've always been around cars. My dad owned a string of BMW dealerships in the Midlands. He's now moved into a multi-franchise that involves Kia. So having graduated university, I went to work at the Kia dealership. And Kia are really at the forefront of this. They're really leading the charge on the hybrid and electric technology. So it was a real pleasure to work alongside those vehicles, but it kind of, picked my fascination in EV. So I became interested in it, and I was fortunate at the end of last year to do some traveling. I went and spent some time in Japan, and I saw when I was there that their EV adoption and technology and infrastructure is so far ahead of where we are. It kind of made me realize that, this is coming, it's inevitable. And when there's such a seismic shift in the industry like this, there's got to be somewhere where we can, there's got to be a gap to expose. So I've always wanted to work in the automotive industry, and I've always wanted to work for myself. So as I discussed earlier, I put my brain together and realized there's a real gap in the market for a cover-all information service that can generate leads for the EV industry. In terms of the team, there's me, and I'm quite young, but I see things with a different and fresh perspective. And I think that's important in the EV sector. But I've got a really strong team behind me that have got over sort of 45, 50 years experience in the industry to back things up. So I guess that's us really, and where it really came from. It was kind of seeing a gap and a need that needed fixing and trying to find a creative solution to that.
Yeah. We've had a question come in actually, Tom, from Colin Hennessy, who says, does Tom have a view on what charging solutions will prove best? Charging forecourts, on-street charging, destination charging? It's these type of questions, isn't it, Tom, which I suppose your website and what you're trying to do is give people the knowledge for them to make the best the best lifestyle choices, isn't there? It goes back to this confusion question that it's not just a case of filling up your petrol car when the warning light comes on. People have got to make some lifestyle changes, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. It's just making people aware. I mean, something that a lot of people don't know is that if you don't have off-street parking, you can't actually install a charge point at home. So, I'd love to say that every home in the UK should have a charging point and that'll solve it. But what do you do for the people who don't have charge points at home? Well, you need investment from the government, councils to make charging points available on the streets. That's key. So destination charging, i.e. on your street at home is really important. But the rapid charging infrastructure really needs to improve. You touched on it there with the rapid the charging forecourts. We're seeing the first proper filling station, as you will, open in Essex later on this year that has something like 15 to 20 rapid charge points, and we're going to need to see charge forecourts like that open all over the UK, where people who do longer journeys, maybe they're travelling over 400 miles a day, which tends to exceed, or currently exceeds any EV range, they can pop in, get a full charge, and continue with their journey. And it's making people aware of, yes, the benefits, which there are many, but also, being realistic about where we're at. And we have loads of tools on the website, loads of guides. We're always working on content that can make people aware of what EV suits their lifestyle, and being realistic and saying, well, if you're commuting 150 miles to work, every day, maybe an EV isn't right for you right now. Maybe you should look at a plug-in hybrid, a mild hybrid, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Did you drive an EV yourself, James?
I have many on test. I've got my own wall box charger. I don't actually own an electric car yet, but yeah, it's because I tend to drive all sorts of different cars. When I have an electric car, I find myself having to adapt my lifestyle as well, and it's quite interesting how you don't have to make major changes, but there are some changes involved, really.
Yeah.
But I'm a big advocate of electric cars. I think they're great, but yeah, there are some big hurdles to overcome at the moment. And one of which we've had a question come in, James McKelvey, who says, how will people charge? How will people with only on-street parking charge their cars. I mean, trailing cables is a health and safety issue. This is the problem at the moment, is that people are being encouraged or, you know, being tempted to buy plug-in hybrids and electric cars, and yet they may not have the correct lifestyle, their own infrastructure to actually support that, which is why we need perhaps better education and also more infrastructure in charging hubs, like you were saying, because, you know, you look at the types of houses that we have in the UK, Victorian houses, terrace housing. I live in a housing estate here, which, you know, there's no visitor car parking. Yeah. It's very difficult to charge cars for most people. So if we can actually try and overcome some of these negatives, people will buy electric cars, won't they?
Definitely, 100%. And it's a very valid point. You know, someone needs to come up with a solution to that. Where do people charge when they've got on-street, you know, if they haven't got on-street parking? And I think, you know, it's important to be realistic that currently in its current state, EV isn't for everybody. If everyone switched to an EV overnight, the grid wouldn't be able to cope. We wouldn't have the infrastructure to cope with it. But what's important is that there is a demand there at the moment for people who can switch into EV and want to switch into EV, particularly using hybrid as a stepping stone to that. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of smart people than you and I that will come up with the solutions to where do they charge, you know, installing charge points at lampposts, having those, you know, available, you know, on streets in parking spaces like that. That will all come. I mean, it has to come, especially if we commit, you know, in law to have the ban in by 2030. I think what we can do is just try and be as honest and realistic as possible, educate the customers on our site like we do, make them aware of what kind of EV or hybrid vehicle ownership suits their lifestyle so they can make a decision based on information and what's right for them, which is what we really try and focus on, that sort of informative approach.
Yeah. Now it's not just customers that you help. You're working with dealers, aren't you? Just explain what you're doing there.
Yeah, definitely. So as I've mentioned, the site is, you know, it effectively acts in the simplest terms. It's a great big information source for everything you need. What's important is that we try and put the dealer at the centre of what we do. So when we get the customer on, we put them through a relatively robust inquiry process. But once they hit the point of inquiry, we pass them down to one of our dealer partners. So in the simplest terms, we're generating leads for the dealer network in the ever-growing, you know, ever-evolving electric vehicle market. We're the first and only lead generation tool specifically for hybrid and electric vehicles, you know, which is really important to stress. There's no one else doing what we're doing at the moment, and we want to take this on, you know, to be the place for everything to do with EV. So, you know, if there's dealerships that are out there that are wondering where are their new car leads coming from at the moment, particularly in the current market where EV is the only sector that's growing, we can help with that in its simplest form. You know, there's a lot more to the site than that, and we do offer more than that. But we can generate leads for dealerships, you know, directly to your inbox for customers who are genuinely interested in switching over to hybrid or electric.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I would presume here that the leads generated from your website are high quality ones, because, you know, just on the simple fact that people have come to your website, they've read associated reviews about the car, they've chosen the car they want. When they actually press the inquire button and that inquiry is sent to the dealer, they're in a pretty good place to actually buy. You know, they're ready, I would say. Is that true? Definitely.
And it's just something that we'd like to stress, is that we don't advertise deals on the homepage. We don't encourage inquiry from the homepage. As I've mentioned, we use an informative educative process, which hopefully the dealers will find, you know, and they might agree that it's a breath of fresh air in the lead generation world. I think these days, you know, too many lead generation tools create a race to the bottom because they're all based around price. Whereas we focus on information, and we find that approach works with EV because the customers don't know as much about electric cars, so they have to spend more time online, which is why the information-based approach works. What we then find is that our whole user journey is designed to be friendly, you know, information-based. There's loads of different avenues to go off and find out about, you know, if you're not sure about what a plug-in hybrid is, what a mild hybrid is, what a kilowatt battery is the whole user journey is designed to push them through that process, educate them. So in theory, when they hit the point of inquiry, they've pre-qualified themselves. So we're passing warm leads down to the dealership. You know, they selected specifically, they want contacts from the dealership based on the vehicle they're interested in. So it's not cold prospecting by any stretch. So we do see our actual inquiries generate into appointments at a very high ratio.
Great. Okay. So the business was started earlier this year. The website went live during the summer. That's correct, isn't it? So how's it been? Have you sort of witnessed this growing interest in electric cars?
Yeah, to be honest, it's been quite a bizarre period. I mean, obviously launching a business during the COVID time is challenging in itself. You couldn't write it, and going in into lockdowns and out of lockdowns and whatever, but it's actually worked in our favour in some ways. The initial lockdown gave me a chance to sit down, spend hundreds of hours researching the EV market to understand it in every aspect, which was almost a blessing. What we're seeing is people are sitting at home on their computers Googling about electric cars. I mean, we're seeing our hits go up day by day in line with the previous lockdown during this lockdown. EV search terms, they're more searched than ever before. I think during the initial lockdown period, some of the most searched terms on a lot of manufacturers' websites were EV. So like we say, we're seeing this interest. Whether it lasts into the post-COVID world, we're not sure. But what we're seeing is we've taken a step down a road that we're not going to come back from. So I think what's really important is for the dealers to think about how they future-proof their business. Where are your leads coming from in the hybrid and electric world? That's obviously something that we can help with.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, lastly, Tom, I mean, that's sort of my next question, really. I mean, if dealers want to get in touch and have a conversation with you, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely. Just reach out to me personally. You can obviously find me on LinkedIn, or my email address is just tom.vickers@gocharged.co.uk. Or if you want to get in contact with someone at the team, it's hello@gocharged.co.uk. The team are on hand, and I'll be on hand to answer any questions you've got. Obviously, we're really keen to grow this lead generation service. We're finding the interest is there from the customers. There are leads available for you, so we can help with that. We also offer other services to our dealer partners. We offer electric vehicle event support. I know it's a bit of a contentious issue at the moment with COVID. I know each dealer group has a bit of a different approach to it, but when we come out of this, hosting electric specific events is a great way to boost the profile of electric. So we've hosted one of those before with one of our other dealer partners, and we had a great success in terms of increasing EV sales and EV inquiries, so we can support in that aspect. Also, because we do cover other aspects, including charging, we've developed a bit of a sort of a charge point consultancy service. So we're in a position, because of our knowledge of the market in general, both the dealer requirements and from the charging side of things, to advise dealerships on what kind of charging infrastructure they might need. So I know that it's coming down the pipelines from the manufacturers. They might start to mandate X amount of charge points or having a rapid charge point on site. We can help you with that, to sort of, again, future-proof the needs of your business as the customer's requirements change. So, obviously the lead generation is mostly what we do, but I'd encourage any dealer who wants to have a general chat about electric and, and how they can sort of start to future-proof their business. Just reach out to me or one of the team, and we'd love to have an initial chat.
Fantastic, Tom. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there for today, but absolutely fascinating learning about the business, hearing your thoughts on the electric car market, and I really do wish you the best. So thanks very much for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having us on. It's been great.
Now, if you'd like to be involved in a Car Dealer Live just like this one, then please do email me, james.batchelor@blackpoolmedia.co.uk. Thanks again to Tom for giving up his time today. But until next time, thanks very much for watching, and bye-bye.